Hello and welcome, everybody. You're in the session called Product-Led or Sales-Led, Should You Make the Leap? Many SaaS companies are succeeding today not through the strength of the execution of their sales teams, but rather through the addictive qualities of the product itself. We all know product-led growth is taking the SaaS world by storm, with a promising allure of quicker growth and lower SaaS acquisition costs. People generally consider it to mean driving revenue through the product itself, designing the product for the end user, and letting the user experience the product before monetization. But what we're trying to answer here today is whether the grass is really always greener on the other side. Instead of having each of us have to ponder that on our own, I'm super thrilled to have here with me today 3 very experienced SaaS leaders to let us get to the bottom of this question. So I've been lucky. I've had the benefit of getting a little sneak preview. So just as a teaser, we'll get to listen to Jan Arendtsz from Celigo talk us through transitioning from a sales-led approach, to Mike Weir from G2 speak about aligning the CRO and CPO positions, and to Paul Lynch from Chargify remind us that no matter our go-to-market model, we still need to focus on identifying and serving our target customer. As a short, brief background to myself, my name is Ingrid Bonde Akerlind. I started my startup career in growth marketing, product marketing, and pricing leadership roles. Most recently, I was the VP of Marketing and Growth at a Stockholm-based startup, joining them at seed stage and left them at post-Series A to join Ox VC. I'm now an investor at Ox. We're a B2B SaaS-focused fund backing European SaaS startups at what we call the emerging go-to-market fit stage, when the commercial teams are scaling and the go-to-market model is gaining predictability. But I'm not the focus of today's panel, so let's get on to our panelists. Mike, would you like to kick us off? Could you please introduce yourself, your company, and whether you would describe your approach as sales-led, product-led, or a hybrid of both?
Absolutely. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everybody. Mike Weir, I'm the Chief Revenue Officer at G2. G2 is where you go for software. We ultimately want to help buyers to make highly informed decisions about the options they have in the market and whether or not it's going to fit for their specific company type. We approach it, and I have historically approached it in a hybrid model so that it isn't a just pure product-led or a pure sales-led approach. And I'm really looking forward to sharing more about why.
Wonderful. Looking forward to listening to it. Jan, what about yourself?
Hello, everyone. Jan Arendtsz. I'm the founder and CEO of Celigo. So what we do is we help companies automate their business processes by connecting the enterprise through integration. So we are an integration platform. The industry calls the space iPaaS, integration platform as a service. So we've been around for a few years, and I think about 5 years back, we decided to go ahead and entirely re-platform. And we decided to do that because we wanted to really take this concept of integration that's fairly complex, fairly technical, and we wanted to simplify it as much as possible. And we wanted to allow both technical users as well as not so technical users, what we call a tech-savvy business user, be able to come in and build integration. So that was kind of the guiding light for us to re-platform. And I mean, clearly at that time, 5 years back, I'd not even heard the term product-led growth. All we wanted to do was make it accessible to a large audience in terms of end users. And we wanted to build a product where someone can come in, sign up, and literally within seconds start building integrations. And I do want to point out one key difference here is that unlike a lot of other well-known product-led growth companies that specialize in solving a particular business problem, it's a business application, we are ultimately a platform. And so our journey has been a little bit different, and happy to expand on that later on this session.
Looking forward to hearing more. Last but not least, Paul, what about yourself?
Thank you, Ingrid. Good morning, everyone joining us from North America or wherever you are, or afternoon in Europe. I'm Paul Lynch. I'm the CEO of Chargify. We're a billing and subscription management company, and we focus specifically on the B2B SaaS market. As a SaaS player, we're a pretty mature company. We've been around since 2009, so we're coming into our 13th year of existence, and we've had a sort of broad experience across multiple different industry categories in terms of how we've gone to market and the products and services we've delivered, which has ultimately brought us to this point today, where we have a very, very strong product roadmap and thesis around servicing the specific global B2B SaaS market. We specialize in sort of advanced billing, so complex billing rollouts and requirements that encompasses the whole sort of move to usage-based value pricing, and metered batch utility, and sort of more complex solutions than your standard, charge me $20 a month, box of the month kind of services.
Wonderful. All right, so let's kick it off with one of my favorite topics, which is team alignment in companies. So in a sales-led approach, we all know the drill. You need to have everyone who owns parts of the customer lifecycle aligned, whether that's from marketing to sales to customer success. Then along comes product-led growth or hybrid models, and suddenly you're introducing a new team in there, the product team. I'd love to start by digging into who owns the customer lifecycle at your companies, and how do you align among those teams? Mike, I know you've spoken a lot about how you partner with the CPO at G2. Maybe you'd kick us off here, offering some of your insights.
Yeah, absolutely. So our Chief Product Officer, Sarah Rossio, is amazing. Love having a great partnership with the product leader. And for us, the customer life cycle, it actually starts even before that, right? Because of the nature of our company, we start with our buyers, the individuals who are researching technologies, trying to learn about what's available in the market, compare and make informed and effective decisions. And so our CPO is very maniacal about understanding the buyer behaviors, what they're looking for, and creating the experience for them that then becomes the foundation for what she and I and our whole organization talk about relative to the customers. So if we're creating buyer value, how do we bring customers into that in a very authentic and valuable way? So the approach we take is a top-down, bottoms-up, so that we have perspective coming from the product organization that allows for them to build a roadmap of innovation, but also has a contrast, because we think the push and pull is extremely important to keep a very solid balance on what's going on in the market. So I've built a 3-year roadmap with the existing product roadmap as the guiding point, but I came back to Sarah and we sat down and talked through ideas that we had around how we could expand our total addressable market, how we could advance some of our existing products in different ways based on market trends that we were seeing, based on how we wanted to engage with customers across their life cycle differently, from prospects to brand new customers to multi-year customers that we have. And they're looking for the latest and greatest. And so we needed to create more layers within our roadmap to be able to serve those different customers and their maturity with us better. And so the bottoms-up approach comes in through feedback loops that we create with an ideas portal and with a labs concept that allows anybody in the company to be able to submit ideas via the ideas pool and get them upvoted for product to consider building them in. And those tend to be where we get amazing innovations about how customers want to use us based on their maturity. Brand new customer, how can we help onboard better? How can we give you more educational tools to use our platform? Long-term customers, they're pushing us in great ways to innovate. And so we want to create those top-down, bottoms-up motions to really balance the organization on what's going to be best for our buyers, and in turn, make it a great seller experience for our clients.
That's super interesting. So it's about the push and pull with people with different sorts of perspectives on that customer and their lifecycle needs. Paul, do you agree with that?
Actually, I do, yeah. I think you make a very good point, Mike. I'll sort of elaborate on it a little bit in terms of where Chargify would view it and where I would view it. I think to answer, what I didn't stipulate when I introduced Chargify was what we were we a product or a sales-led business? I'd see us very much as a hybrid, and I do feel that, you know, there doesn't need to be a jarring kind of change in companies if you want to take a larger focus towards product-led growth rather than sales-led growth. I mean, I think this sort of is dependent at the stage that your company is at within its life cycle. And I think, you know, there will be certain, you know, onus on sales over product-led growth, you know, earlier on when you're trying to get revenue and get yourselves to an initial raise period, you know, and then you'll drive more towards product. To talk to Mike's position, yeah, I mean, we would take a bottoms up, top down approach as well, as far as the customer life cycle is concerned. I think the two most prominent people in any organization around this is probably going to be your revenue leader and your CPO. But I think as you get into smaller companies, everyone across the management team needs to have a strong viewpoint on this and be fully engaged. I don't think anyone can sort of not take a position on it, be you in marketing or be you in engineering. And I think the CEO or the leader in organizations needs to be the person that brings this level of cohesive and alignment. His job is to garner and drive consensus across his leadership team that, you know, everyone is engaged with the customer life cycle, and everyone feels that their opinion is heard. Because how we do that, fundamentally, it's the most important thing for us to grow our business and to build long-term value for our customer, which ultimately is where we will derive long-term value for our stakeholders, investors, and our personnel.
Thank you. Jan, are you also the consensus driver in aligning everybody across the customer lifecycle at your company?
Yeah. And look, every company is different. So again, I don't think I stated as to where we stand in the intro as well. So just as Paul said, we are a hybrid as well, and we've made a transition to do both, even though we have both sales-led and product-led models in existence today simultaneously. For us, I think the customer experience is really important. So we have an entire customer organization, starting with implementation, customer success managers, support, education, so on and so forth. So I think it's that intersection of product, sales, marketing, and the customer organization that really drives it. They're all equally important. And I must say that our product team, our product managers are very involved in both kind of typical pre-sales and especially post-sales. They are always in various different accounts, understanding how customers are using us, the adoption patterns. So it's, without getting into too much detail, it's just one big feedback cycle, and the sum is greater than the parts. That's
a really good way to put it, sum is greater than the parts. I'd love to continue actually with you, Jan, and dig a little more into this sort of re-platforming. I find that a lot of this sort of content articles we might come across online talk far more about how you start off product-led, and then at 5 or 10 million of ARR, that's the time to layer on a sales team, and you shift more to sales-led. You've obviously taken a very different approach, which I think is super interesting, re-platforming. Could you talk us through the transition? Sort of, what were the unexpected challenges? What were the really keys that made it all succeed? And how was that transition? And for sure, it's never done. So perhaps where are you now?
Yeah, especially that last part, understanding that. So look, our journey is different, right? Because we decided to re-platform. You go through all these headaches of migrations, and then for a certain period of time, selling 2 different product stacks, so on and so forth. Putting that aside, we had a sales-led model, and we introduced a new platform, and right from the get-go, we had as I said before, the mindset was, look, someone should be able to come in, sign up, and without reading the documentation, without getting trained, they should be able to start building a particular integration workflow. And integration is not simple. It's not like just using a simple business application, right? You have a certain objective, and you're trying to stitch together various different apps together. So with that mantra, we decided very early on, right from day number one, that we would have a freemium model. We would have free trials where you can get all the functionality of the product. And so for us, the interesting thing was to adapt to that model. All of a sudden, we figured that our go-to-market was not well suited to support these users who are trying to build these various different integrations, and so we had to divert some of our go-to-market bandwidth to be able to cover that, and so we've now gotten to a model where I think, especially on that kind of freemium trial aspect, it's working pretty well. It's certainly not perfect, and we're starting to get into situations where some end users go in there and they actually build out multiple different integrations. They test it out, and then they come to us and say, okay, we're ready to buy. And that is just music to our ears, right? And it's still a fairly small percentage of the kind of overall model, but it's ultimately 5 years later that it's realizing that vision that we had. So again, our story is a little bit different than most SaaS companies.
So what I take from that is that if you're going to go that direction, be persistent and be very clear on what you're trying to achieve. Mike and Paul, we mentioned there are sort of free trials and freemiums. Those are some of the common toolkits when you're exploring product-led growth. How do you approach each of those tools at your own companies? Do you use them? Do you not use them? And why?
I think I'll go first, Mike. I think the it depends on what your company is. It depends on what you do. It depends on who you sell to, who is the buyer persona. I mean, this will determine whether or not freemium is the right, or, like, I'm not going to say wrong model. I don't think you can talk in absolutes around that kind of positioning, because it has a lot more to do. I mean, it's around brand awareness, perception, it's around sort of value pricing, there's a lot of things that touch upon this. For me, it's very, two questions, right? One, you need to understand and need to be aligned as a management team. Is your product a product that is bought, or is your product a product that is sold? Okay. If people come to your platform and then buy your product without a need to be touched upon by a sales function, then and also if you have a well-informed and technical kind of user base, like you're a developer tool, and these guys don't like to be sold to. These guys are highly technical. They're able to figure it out themselves. Yeah, I mean, this is a good platform for freemium. And then your job is to, once you get these guys hooked, optimize. This is what Jan is thinking about all the time. How do I increase my freemium to paid cohort that's moving across? And if I had an answer to it, I've always said I'd write a book and I'd retire on it, because I'd be a billionaire, because this is a big dilemma within SaaS businesses in the freemium model. For me, Chargify is not a business that is necessarily bought. It's a complex fintech tool. It takes developer resources to deploy into your stack. We manage your full product catalog. We manage your full customer base revenue. We integrate into 26 payment processors, so we manage payment processing across credit cards into ACH. We got global currency management in terms of selling across multi-different jurisdictions. Nobody really comes in and says, hey, I don't need anyone to help me with this. I'm happy to figure it out myself. You know, there is a lot of diligence around, you know, buying the kind of fintech tool that we are. And for me, a company that comes in and says, hey, just give me access to the API and I'll figure it all out myself, it's not a credible lead. They want to be going back into their board, their stakeholders, their investors, and they want to be showing an appropriate level of due diligence done to pick a partner like us. Nobody wakes up in the morning and says, well, it will be fun today. I think I'll change my billing and subscription management provider. That'll be great. Take a couple of hours. No, it's not like that. So
yeah, I didn't do that yesterday.
Exactly. So to answer the question around, you know, what's the best model, understand the buyer persona, understand who's buying from you, you know, understand whether or not your product is one that's bought or sold. And from that point, you know, you can make meaningful decisions. Also know, like Jan, when he has this freemium model there, it's not just around growth. I mean, he's saying something to the market around the quality of his product. He's saying, look, come in and use it. We'll open the kimono. If you don't like it, don't buy, but we'll let you try it for free. So it's a very strong message to put out there, and it shows that, you know, it shows a large amount of belief in one's brand, in one's product, in one's platform to do that.
Interesting words. The user personas and the bought versus sold. Mike, obviously you also have a very different perspective because you have a different product and company here as well. So what's your take on this debate?
Yeah, well, first I love Paul's perspective on this because that is, I completely agree, the right way to be thinking about it is just literally how difficult is your product to use, how is the selling motion, and how is the adoption and utilization motion. You know, in our world, we have to think about it on two different horizons. At the very basic level, because we really foster a marketplace, we want, you know, active and passive companies within that marketplace. We continuously add to the profiles and the companies and the products that they build within our overall marketplace because that's necessary for our buyer experience. And we know that not everybody's going to want to be actively engaged in the G2 marketplace. So we create a freemium model that allows for all products to be represented, whether or not you're a paying client, because that's best for our buyers. We want to be open and agnostic. And so on the one level, we create a very basic freemium model that allows anybody to be listed, anybody's presence to be there and be discoverable by the buyer community. And then of course, we use traditional techniques to be able to engage those folks and then eventually hand them to a salesperson to educate them more on why become active, what value can it create for your business. And in that sales motion, like the product can help get us there, but we need to engage directly with clients. But the second part of our platform is, you know, more the traditional, like our G2 Track product is actually a SaaS spend and compliance management product. And we have a great freemium model there, which is like, hey, if you want to use this, if you want to put the time into setting it up, it, you know, basically takes about an hour or less. Plug this into your financial systems, plug this into the appropriate places within your single sign-on, and we'll help you immediately start seeing what SaaS you have within your corporate environment, what rogue IT is out there. And you can start utilizing some of the basic functionality to experience what Track can provide. And then, as always, we have higher level editions that people can get more and more functionality that could require hands-on support. So we do actually have to look at it in a very product-led approach, which is like get access to the product, make it super easy to plug in, and then eventually introduce a sales professional. And on the marketplace side, it is much more of a, you can be a part of the experience, but eventually you've got to engage with sales to get full value out of it.
Interesting. It's interesting too how you have two different products going on at the same time actually, and obviously you cater to both of them. One thing I was picking up there is sort of each of you were answering that is we speak both about users and we speak about buyers. Traditionally in SaaS, obviously knowing our ICP, our target buyer persona is super important. Now entering this hybrid product-led growth world, we also have user personas to think about. So how do you think about that? Who identifies those personas and how do you incorporate them into your business strategies, your companies? Paul, how about we start off with you for this one?
It's a great question. I mean, I'm not sure that the popularity of the populist movement around product-led growth has necessarily made this any more relevant than it was a couple of years ago. I mean, we always need to, like, a quick path to failure is not recognizing, you know, the user versus the buyer, right? I look at sort of Chargify. I mean, we're a technology tool that fits into the tech stack. We often laugh, well, we often say, rather than laugh, that we're a tool that's bought by developers but used by accountants, you know? So if we just tailor to the developer that purchased Chargify and puts it into the tech stack, integrates it with HubSpot or Salesforce and NetSuite, and, you know, we don't cater to the accountant that actually uses us, we'll churn out in very quickly. You know what I mean? It's not so like yes. I mean, I think the sort of product-led growth strategies have probably, you know, amplified this as a requirement, but it certainly hasn't created it. Yeah, understand. You know, don't just understanding the buyer is not enough for long-term or sustained success for any SaaS business or any business in general. We need to cater to the individual user, and we need to innovate to them. Chargify is a really, really good case here, and I'm not purely saying this because I'm the chief executive. Like Chargify, everyone in the company uses us. You know, so the accountant uses us to close the books at the end of the month. The CFO uses us to get analytics so we can make decisions around budgeting. The CEO uses us to see trends in terms of what's selling, you know, where and to who. The sales team uses us to look at opportunities that they've previously been engaged on Chargify. The customer success people live in us because, I mean, within Chargify, they see the billing records, they see who's paid, et cetera, et cetera. So, like, if I simply said, you know, today, Ingrid, I'm going to delight the accountants and completely ignored the customer success people that used us, I would just find, like, these guys would become detractors within the organization. And, you know, the louder and louder and louder that voice and volume becomes, the more difficult it will be to keep that customer engaged. So yeah, I mean, I think in every company, you got to understand that the buyer isn't always the user, and that even if the buyer is the user, there may be other people within the organization that are currently using you, and you have to give equal measure in terms of how you focus on everybody. You neglect one group and they become a vocal detractor, your opportunity to keep that business and that customer happy is going to be hugely limited.
Sound like eternal words of wisdom that all companies should be using, indeed.
Yeah, and it's not like, I mean, I think this is just like the guys at, like, Mike and Jan are gnarly as well. I mean, they've been around. I mean, this isn't about SaaS or their business.
Yeah,
this is just good practice
for us as well. What you said, we straddle a line between business and IT, and it's not. I don't mean to downplay other apps, but there are a number of other apps that are, let's say, product-led that solve a particular use case. It's very easy to go hone in on that. What we do is very different.
Yeah.
All right. I actually think we only have a few minutes left. So audience, if you have any questions, if you want to start typing them into the chat box so that we can answer them. And while we're waiting to see if any arrive, I wanted to ask each of you, we've now had a great conversation. If you had one snappy, tweetable tip for the audience to remember and take with them, what would it be? Let's see. Who's the fastest at coming up with something?
All right, I'll go first. So based on the context of this conversation, irrespective of model, ultimately, in terms of what we do, and I think this applies to most B2B SaaS companies, it's adoption and realizing value. And what is the fastest path to get there? If you solve that, you're going to be in good company.
All right. It's about figuring out the fastest path to success. Mike or Paul, how about you?
Just go, Mike. For me, I love in SaaS, we always have dilemmas. I love the innovator's dilemma. You know, if you do want to adopt, like, there were two different, you got a B2C, in terms of SaaS businesses, you see virality, a lot of it. Snapchat, WhatsApp, these things, they're all product led. You know what I mean? No one's selling that in the B2C world. B2B is a little bit more complex. So the big dilemma around the innovator is, you know, when to go to market. You want to have a product led growth strategy. You want to drive virality. You want to drive brand awareness and stuff in the market. So you want to drive the best possible product. But we all know that it's the best product doesn't always win. It seldom wins. The product which is first to market and gains market share and peace of mind, that's the one that wins. So, you know, in terms of your sales or your product-led strategy, when do you go to market with your product? When is your MVP suitable to go to market? Don't dilly-dally. The sooner you can get there, the sooner, as Jan said, you can drive adoption, the better the chance of success you'll have. Now, I'm not talking about launching rubbish products, okay? I'm saying understand, you know, when the product is fit as an MVP to go to market.
Wonderful. Mike.
Kind of thing from the previous discussion is you got to protect your core. And I think that is so important as companies grow and scale and we take on serving more personas, is that we cannot lose focus on who the core of our business is, who is that core persona. Because if we deviate from them, I think to part of Paul's point earlier, they become big detractors. because very quickly companies sprawl and they try to do too much and they dilute and they minimize their value for all, and it causes huge churn issues. So make sure that you're always protecting that core.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
Note to end on. All right. Thank you, everybody, so much for listening. I really appreciate the conversation. I hope that you did as well. And let's take it from Paul. Let's not dilly-dally. Let's go build some products and launch some products right now. All right. Thanks, everybody.